Ahoy hoy, I'm Planet Walk, and as I am sure you are all aware, there is a creationist that exists somewhere out there called Matt Powell. Now, recently I had a bit of an idea, so I decided to take a quick look at Matt Powell's videos, but here's the thing. It doesn't seem like he talks about evolution as much as he used to. However, he still does usual Christian preacher stuff like taking on the problem of evil, for example. Now, given how bad his arguments are on the subject of evolution, it's not like he can do any worse when it comes to the problem of evil, right? Surely.
The most famous philosophical argument against Christianity is the problem of evil. Now, many people will say that since bad things happen, therefore there cannot be a good and loving God.
I think the argument applies more to an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving God. Because if God is all-powerful, then he should easily be able to stop evil things from happening. And because he doesn't do that, that would mean that he's not all-loving. I mean, an all-loving God could exist if he's not all-powerful, because he could be powerless to stop the evils that happen in the world. I also think there's a distinction to be made between bad things and evil things. Sure, evil things are bad things, but not all bad things are evil things. Like, if I trip over and scrape my knee, that is not something evil that's happened. I can understand why an all-loving, all-powerful God would let something like that happen. It's just the worst things out there that I have a problem with.
But this is so flawed, and here's why. Because if there is no God, justice will never be served to injustices that have happened all throughout history, even up until today.
That is not a good argument against the problem of evil, especially if you believe what Matt Powell believes. And also, when it comes to the problem of evil, it's more the fact that God allows unneeded suffering in the first place. If someone is made to starve their whole life because they live in poverty, that is something that God shouldn't allow in the first place. I don't care whether God decides to make it up to them, he shouldn't have even allowed it.
Every wrongdoing, every Nazi that tortured men, women, and children, every person that's committed rape, or every axe murderer out there, throughout history will never be dealt with if there is no God.
I mean, sure, if there's no God, then there will be people that will get away with heinous things. However, I'm not convinced that they would be dealt with even if there was a God. Or at least not if the Bible is the final word on God, or it is the God that Matt Powell seems to believe in.
It's just evil, and there's nothing that can be done about it.
Wait, nothing can be done about it? In that case, why do we have a justice system then? I thought the whole point of a justice system was to, try and bring justice to those kinds of people.
So the real problem of evil actually is for atheists. They can't deal with it, they can't explain it, they don't have a model or a worldview that can actually propose a solution to this issue.
The justice system, Matt! The whole reason why we have a justice system is because we don't believe that there's going to be supernatural punishments delivered to people after they die. Is it perfect? No. But I'd rather take my chances with that rather than hoping for divine judgment.
So when people say the world has evil in it, therefore there cannot be a good and loving God, well then all is misery then, and all is nothing but chaos and destruction then. Because justice will never be served if that's the case.
I wouldn't say that all is misery then. I mean, I exist. People have told me that that's a good thing about the world. It's just that there's bad things that also happen, and really, it's on humans to try and stop those bad things from happening. Can we stop all of it happening? No. But we can at least try to stop the worst of it.
But thankfully that's not the case. Thankfully God created you and I. God loves you and I. And the reason that the problem of evil is not a problem for Christianity, it never was, is because God at the end of time is going to judge and make every single wrong right and bring justice to every single injustice that's happened all throughout history.
Okay, here's the problem with that, Matt. How exactly does that work with the whole saved by Christ thing? If all I need to do is believe in Jesus with all my heart to wash away my sins, then that doesn't sound like justice to me. Instead, that sounds more like an abuse of power from a corrupt tyrant who will give special favors to those that swear loyalty to him. If a real-life dictator acted like God, then we would all recognize that as being evil. However, because we're talking about God, people say, oh, but you can't hold him to human standards. Why not? He holds us to his standards, doesn't he? At least with certain human standards, there's a lot of reasoning and philosophy behind it, whereas with a lot of God's standards, it's just God said so. For example, offering salvation for loyalty is bad because it doesn't actually bring justice to any of the injustices that have been committed. Let's give an example. Let's say that people had brought a class action lawsuit against me because I was being too cringe. And so I go to the judge and say, you know, you should drop this lawsuit against me, and if you do, we can be besties. I'll even give you a shout out in a video. If I did that, there would be an uproar. The people that have had family members and loved ones fall into a cringe coma, they wouldn't be getting justice. They wouldn't get compensated for what has happened, and I wouldn't face the consequences of my actions. Put simply, that is not justice, and it is even worse in the case of God because he's supposed to be judging everybody. And haven't we all fallen short of the glory of God? And if that is the case, then the only thing that really matters is whether you believe in God, which removes all sense of justice that system might have had.
If you think there's no God, then you cannot possibly define evil or good.
Well, I can tell Matt Powell hasn't taken any kind of lesson in philosophy, that's for certain.
For good to exist, evil must exist. And so that's why Christianity perfectly explains the dichotomy between these two things.
You know, that doesn't quite work. Remember when I said this earlier? I also think there's a distinction to be made between bad things and evil things. Sure, evil things are bad things, but not all bad things are evil things. So yes, this is another point where that comes into play. I can agree that you probably can't have good without bad. It would be like if you ate the same food every day and you never tasted anything else. You wouldn't be able to say that it tasted good, but you wouldn't be able to say that it tasted bad because it's the only thing that you really know. However, that doesn't mean that you need evil, because evil is a type of bad that's just way worse. To use the food analogy, it would be like saying, to say that chocolate tastes good, you need to know what something truly repugnant tastes like. That is obviously ludicrous. I just need to know what something bad tastes like.
And it offers a solution to the evil that we see at hand. And so, atheism offers nothing but hopelessness, darkness, and a delusional way of life.
Well, that's not true, because firstly, atheism isn't just one thing. There's a lot of different ways that people could be an atheist. You can be a spiritual atheist where you believe in something like the afterlife or reincarnation or karma. You just don't believe in a god. For me, I don't believe in any of those things. However, that doesn't mean that all I have is hopelessness and darkness and delusion. For me, it means that I'm free to do whatever I want, provided that fits within the laws of physics. Like, I can't just gain superpowers, as cool as that would be. Basically, I can create my own purpose, and sometimes, sure, it can be a little bit more consequential based on whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve. However, it's not like I'm going to get divinely punished if I don't lift a sword from a rock or whatever gods want me to do.
But Christianity offers life, peace, light. Christianity explains why evil happens. It even told us in the Bible that terrible things would happen. The Bible says perilous times shall come.
Wait, if it offers light, peace, and life, but it says that terrible times will come, that doesn't sound like it's offering light, peace, and life. That sounds like it's offering terrible times. You know what atheism offers? It offers the things in the Bible not being true, so we don't have to worry about terrible times coming. Sure, terrible times might come, but, you know, that's just a consequence of whatever happens to happen. It also means that if terrible times are coming, then we potentially have the power to avoid those terrible times. You don't really get that with Matt Powell's Christianity.
God has allowed for there to be a battle between good and evil on this earth. God has allowed that.
Couldn't he have allowed for some other battle rather than a battle that causes mass suffering? Couldn't he have allowed for a battle between good and bad rather than a battle between good and evil? Or he could have just had a football game, you know? I'm not into football, but a football game sounds better.
Many people get upset that God doesn't step in right now and take care of the issues right now. But look, he gave us free will. He gave us a choice. Do you expect God to just be some puppet master up in heaven just controlling everything?
You know we can have free will without there being evil, right? In fact, there is an argument to be made that certain acts of free will may take away someone else's free will. Slavery, for example, takes away people's free will, so why doesn't God care about their free will? Just saying, oh, God gave us free will is a pretty lazy cop-out. As I said earlier, I am fine if there are bad things happening in the world. I think that bad things can be okay. I'm just not okay with evil things happening, things like slavery, for example. If the Bible is anything to go by, God certainly has no problem with nuking evildoers. Do you remember Sodom and Gomorrah, by any chance?
No, he's given us the choice. He's given us the free will, the ability to either choose to do right or wrong. He's said to choose you this day whom you will serve. He didn't say that he made the choice for us, like Calvinists believe. He said to choose. Yes,
you have a choice, but that doesn't mean that God can't punish you here on Earth for making a terrible choice that negatively affects people. And humans actually do sometimes decide to do that, though we don't always have the greatest rules. That's what a prison is. We take away people's right to choose, or free will, if you will, to stop them from committing evil acts. Or at least that is what it's supposed to be. It doesn't always work out like that.
So this world is where a battle between right and wrong takes place. This is actually what proves the Bible to be true. Every day that I wake up in the morning and I see what goes on in the world, I can pick up the Bible and read it, and it confirms to me that everything that I'm seeing around me on planet Earth is in fact lining up with what God said would happen. That perilous times would come, that men would be lovers of their own selves.
I mean, that's pretty weak evidence. Throughout human history, atrocities have been happening. And Matt, things certainly aren't as bad as, let's say, World War I and World War II. Some pretty horrible times, if you ask me. Given that the perilous times of, let's say, the last 5 to 10 years aren't the worst perilous times that human history has faced, it seems like a pretty easy prediction to get right. Essentially, all this is confirmation bias. He's looking at evidence which he thinks supports his worldview, and not looking at the evidence which goes against it.
Now, to answer why pain exists, why does suffering exist? Well, number one, we wouldn't understand the concept of love if we didn't understand the concepts of suffering and pain.
I would disagree with that, because I don't think that everyone who has felt love has gone through suffering or pain. Now, you could try to make the argument, well, what about scraping your knee? Surely everyone has had that happen to them at some point. Yeah, I don't see the connection between scraping your knee and love. I really don't. All you have to know what love is that you like human connection. That's it.
You see, when Jesus was on the cross and he was dying for our sins, he gave his life and allowed himself to be tortured and to suffer for us. That's how we know that Jesus loved us. When you're willing to suffer for someone else, that means that you love that person very much.
Oh geez, he just messed up so much things there. None of the stuff that he talked about was at all the same. I think I'm just gonna go straight for the heart of this, okay? You do not need to be willing to suffer for someone in order to love them, because that can lead to abusive relationships. Have boundaries and set limits. Don't let people convince you that you need to suffer for someone just because you happen to love them. I certainly feel sorry for whoever happens to be in a relationship with Matt Powell, because that does not sound at all healthy.
You say, what's the answer to the problem of evil? What can we tell the atheists? Tell them about Jesus. What do we tell the skeptics and the secular humanists that are out there that criticize the Christian faith with all their philosophy? Tell them about Jesus.
Yeah, who needs philosophical reasoning when you have Jesus? This does not make a good argument. I can tell you, you're not going to convince someone if someone says, God can't be all-loving because of evil, if you just go, but did you consider Jesus? No, that's not going to convince them. At that point, you might as well just say that you don't have an argument, because Jesus actually makes the problem of evil worse. It would be one thing if when you died you are punished or rewarded accordingly, but it is a completely different thing if you die and it's based on whether you believe in Jesus.
What do you tell children that are confused about their gender and about understanding the world around them? What do you tell them that's going to be the solution to their problems? Tell them about Jesus.
As someone who was told about Jesus when I was just a little kid, you know what was never the solution to any of my problems? Jesus. Turns out that when I actually try to do something for myself because I don't believe that Jesus is going to do everything for me, things end up being a little bit better. And you know, it didn't help one bit with all the confusions that I had about gender at the time. So there's that. Anyway, I think that's a good point to end it. Can you believe that Matt Powell's video was titled Best Response to the Problem of Evil? I think I'm going to go with something that a little bit more accurately describes Matt Powell's video. And no, I'm not talking about just calling the video fart. Though, to be fair, that would be a funny video title. Anyway, leave a like and subscribe if you like this video. Leave a comment letting me know what you'd like to see me do for future videos. As you can probably start to tell, I'm going to go through a lot of them. But I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, Matt Powell has a giant inflatable banana in his backyard which he calls Dr. Peel.